Welcome, all stars. Okay, so today looks a little different. I'm without James and I'm with a computer. I'm doing a Zoom today, and I'm doing a Zoom based on some comments that we got from one of our last episodes. It was the episode I did with LeeAnn back in December, James and I. I made a comment during that episode that I worked as a personal assistant. And since then, I had gotten several comments about how people would love to hear my personal assistant stories. So we decided, let's do it. Let's talk about, when I worked as a personal assistant and what that was like working for 3 different families in Beverly Hills. It was one of the first jobs I got here in Los Angeles. During this podcast, I'm going to bring in another personal assistant. I met her on one of my jobs. She started as a nanny and then went into personal assisting and then nanny work and then personal assisting. She kind of bounced back and forth. So she has a different perspective because she was in the child rearing area of working in a home. I strictly was in the personal assistant area of working in a home. We didn't overlap much. I had nothing to do with kids and she had nothing to do with booking dental appointments. So, it was completely separate, but we passed each other in the hall and we actually chatted a lot, and she and I became best of friends. I was in her wedding and we hang out all the time. Well, did when I was in Los Angeles. I thought it'd be great to bring her on because of her experiences as a nanny as well as a personal assistant. So today what I'm going to do is I'm going to mention a couple of names. I didn't sign NDAs for anyone, but I am very good friends with one of the families I worked for. I worked for them for almost, combined, because I worked for 2 different people in the family, 18 years. And their stories are funny. I wouldn't be friends with them if they weren't amazing people. But just for privacy issues, I'm not going to mention their name. I am going to mention a couple of people, one that's deceased. So there's no issue with that. And again, these stories aren't to shed any ill will on anyone. They're just to talk about what the experience is like. Of course, there are going to be stories that are outrageous. There might be some that are like a little bit like, what? But most of them are just like funny experiences that I've had working as a personal assistant for 18 years. It's just honestly a different life. And every time I tell someone I worked as a personal assistant, whether they're male or female, they always want to hear the stories. So let's get started.
Check the mic and make sure it sound right, boys.
Hey listeners, ever wonder what it would be like to blow up your comfort zone at the tender age of 50? Well, we did just that. When our last kid went off to college, we hit the road in search of a new hometown. Now we bounce from city to city and bring you along for the ride. This is the Skiptown All-Stars podcast.
So Gina, just to do a little recap, I let everyone know that you and I met as I was working as a personal assistant and you were working as a nanny, and we were working for the same family. So people just kind of want to know like what a personal assistant does. And you know this because I'm sure whenever you've been out to a party and you tell someone when you were working as a personal assistant that you were a personal assistant or a nanny, that the first question everyone asks is, who do you work for? What do you do and who do you work for? And especially I think with like the personal assisting. But so I'm just going to give a little bit of a background on myself, and then I want you to give a background on yourself. So most of the people that are listening know that I do this travel podcast now. But prior to that, I owned a day spa for several years. Well, the day spa I owned for the past couple of years, but owned a permanent makeup business for 7.5 years. First beginning of that part of being a permanent makeup artist, I was also still working as a personal assistant. And I did that for almost, 18 years. So when I first came to LA, I got a job offer to work for Gail Zappa, and she was the wife of Frank Zappa. And I say was because she's deceased now. And at the time that I started working for her, Frank Zappa had passed away. When I started for Gail, I didn't work as a personal assistant. I worked in her office, working in the publishing department of their small record label they owned. And basically all I was there to do was to gather requests that either came through the phone or fax machine for people that wanted to use Frank's music in like television commercials or movies. And usually she always said no. So it was like the easiest job. She never let anyone license his music. So I was like, what am I getting paid to do here? So one time she asked me if I would mind coming to the house, if I would mind coming to the house. They had a home office. And she wanted me to work there like on a Friday. She just said there was a lot of things in the office and she wanted to know if I could organize it for her. That was my very, very first foray into personal assisting. That was truly a personal assisting experience, because the moment you walk out of an office and you walk into someone's home, that really is a legit personal assistant. I always feel like executive assistants are just office assistants, and that's a very, very tough job, but they're not personal assistants, because that's completely different. So that was my very first experience of personal assisting on that day. And then it just flourished into an entirely new career for me. I then went on to work at a few different record labels, because that's why I had moved to Los Angeles. And inevitably, people would always ask me in the office, have you ever worked as a personal assistant? Because it just seemed that like the people I worked for had someone at home, like a wife, who needed some help. And could you do it? Not everybody can do it. And you know this, like you have to have a certain personality.
And thick skin.
Oh, for sure. So what was your first experience working as, was it a nanny or was it a personal assistant?
No. So the first experience was the nanny job that ultimately connected us, our friendship.
Okay.
And I got the job through one of my best friends who worked at like a sought after preschool in Santa Monica. Ton of celebrity clients went there, and there was a family that was going there that needed help. At first they just needed help on the weekends. Of course, it starts out with just needing 1 to 3 days.
Oh my God.
And then the next minute you look up and you've signed your life away. So,
but how old were the kids? Because people think a nanny, you're running after 2-year-olds, and you have done that, but how old were these kids?
Yeah, they were older. I want to say 5 and 7 at the time.
Okay.
When I started, yeah, maybe even younger.
Okay.
Now that I think about it. So she connected us, and I went over there. I pull up to this Brentwood estate, basically. First of all, I had never even really ventured into the Brentwood neighborhood. I had heard about Brentwood, obviously through like the OJ trial and all of that. Brentwood kind of became on the map. I knew Brentwood kind of sat like west of Beverly Hills, east of Santa Monica, like this pocket, nothing but Hollywood elite lives there. All the directors.
You were born and raised in LA, and you had not ever entered into Brentwood. So that's kind of crazy.
Yes, that is kind of crazy. Yes, I was born in LA, lived in Culver City, then moved to the Valley. But yeah, I had never really been in that area. I had passed probably like on the freeway, but never really experience the pockets of Brentwood. So driving there, it's like, holy shit, these houses.
It's a different world.
It's like a whole
Brentwood
different
is
world.
tucked away in a part of LA. There's like nothing like Brentwood. Like there's a lot of places like Beverly Hills, but there's nothing like Brentwood.
No, Brentwood is Brentwood. Yeah. So I get there, I go in. I remember the kids were back in their playroom area. So we go back there. Actually, my girlfriend was with me because she knew them from the preschool.
Oh, so she brought you to introduce them.
Right. Yes. So we go back there. We hung out for a little bit. We talked.
How big was this playroom? Just like, let's give a scope of things. Like, you're old now. So you bought a house. You know how many square feet, what square feet is. How many square feet was this playroom? Let's put it in perspective. Was it bigger than your first apartment?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
And I remember walking in, there was like a 70-inch television on the wall, and it looked like the older child had been playing like Madden or something on the television.
Had you
And
ever
then there
even
was like,
seen a TV that big before?
no,
Okay.
no.
Okay.
So, of course, it's like, okay, they've got
Yeah,
a
because this is
70-inch
like,
in the
what year is this?
playroom.
I know. What year is this? Let's go back. Like,
Yeah.
what year? Does anyone
Oh
even have a
God,
flat screen on the TV?
this was probably
2003?
2000 to early 2000s.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. So
And
no,
I remember there was a fish tank on the wall too. They had like their own built-in fish tank in the wall with like Nemo was swimming in it. So
and at this point, we had only seen this in an aquarium.
aquarium, right? Yeah. And and it wasn't even really an interview. I think they liked the fact that they were meeting me through my good friend that worked at the school. It was pretty much all they needed. And literally, the mom turned to me and said, "Can you start tomorrow?" And I just thought, they don't want a background check. They don't want I was like, tomorrow, okay. And I said, in your young early 20s, of course I didn't say anything like, oh, well, can I start next week?
Did we do
Or
a trial?
can I have a trial run? I just said, okay, what time do you want me to be here tomorrow? And of course it was just come for a couple hours. And I think my first day there, I literally think I was there for like 10 hours.
Oh yeah, that's pretty accurate. Like whenever I've walked into a job and they say, "Can you just come for a few hours?" You just pack a lunch because you're going to be there all day.
Yeah, I remember at one point I was putting chicken nuggets in the oven for dinner. My first day, like it's 7:30 and I'm still here. It was
Isn't
like
that crazy?
That's how it started. Just first day, 10-hour day, just thrown into the fire. And it was rough the first couple weeks. The boys weren't really, I had to gain their trust.
You were a stranger that was literally just like, come tomorrow. You were like, you weren't even like broken into like, hey, let's go get some ice cream.
Yeah. And nobody was really around to answer questions I think the mom left. She was gone for hours. Dad was at work.
You were there. That's why
I was there. So I had to I'm asking the housekeepers where things are. It's this humongous house.
And then this turns into how many years?
7. I think I ended up being with them for 7 years.
Isn't that crazy?
Crazy. Obviously the mom, after a while, we kind of butt heads a little bit. It got a little intense, but I adored those boys. I spent so much time with them. So ultimately traveling, we spent a lot and I almost at one point, it's like I became their protector in a way.
Of course. Yeah. Because, they share things with you that they're not going to probably share with their parents. And so, you do become their protector.
I remember I was so mad when the Nanny Diaries book came out and it became a top-selling book. They ended up making a movie.
And
I just remember thinking, I could have written this book. Like I could have had a #1 bestseller turned into a movie. These are all of our stories.
Since you were on the nanny side of things and I was on the personal assistant side of things, I never understood how you were able to put up with the moms. Honestly, to me, that seems so hard because they're gone all day. They're off with their friends. They're shopping. They're lunching. You're the one that's setting the boundaries, setting the rules, feeding the kids. And then they walk in and they're like, hey, what's going on? Why are you feeding them this? Or why aren't they have their homework done? Or why aren't blah, blah, blah. You know what I mean? How did you do that? Because I could never do that. People always say, I can never be a personal assistant. And I always say, well, I can never be a nanny.
Yeah, no, it was definitely hard. I mean, there were times where I was driving home and I literally thought, I don't know if I'm going back there tomorrow. Where I have the responsibility of these kids literally throughout the day, getting them from point A to point B. I'm doing everything. And then there's moments where you're coming and questioning. And I want to say, okay, then jump in. Like,
Yeah.
where are you? You're off, you're up in your office, you're off lunching with girlfriends and shopping. And it was interesting because the energy would change. Like when mom would get home, we'd be doing our thing. I'm trying to set a schedule and we're trying to, have our usual day-to-day things. And then she would come in and swoop in and just change the entire dynamic or energy. It was just kind of crazy the way that worked. It was almost like she would bring in the chaoticness of it.
Yeah. The one thing is that I don't think most people realize, I've learned this just from being in a house with nannies, because I've worked for several different people. When you see a celebrity and you see them with kids, don't be fooled. They are not doing this by themselves. I mean, honestly, the only person, and we all know because we're around them all the time, and you and I have talked about this before. I swear Angelina Jolie is the only celebrity I know that everyone knows those kids were walking around with Cheetos and Doritos and chocolate milk, and they were all over her. And we saw that out in public. Everyone saw her with the kids. I don't know even if she had a nanny, that nanny was always at home. But that's not typical. We all know that is not typical.
No. And, I was naive to a lot of that. So I just thought, I must be in a situation where this mom is just, uninterested. She just wants to swoop in when she seems convenient. But as time went on and I started to meet other nannies in the area, we obviously now are running into each other at the schools, at the basketball and the football practices. And now you're starting to see, now granted, there were one or two moms that were very present and I would see them a lot, but the majority of the group, they were nannies.
Yeah, and
and we're swapping story. What's crazy is we all have the same
stories, right?
You all venting to each other.
Yeah. There's a story.
What? Yeah. Yep.
There's a story I'll never forget, and this was before I met you. And I was working at a record label, and I met a girl who was called the Rock and Roll Nanny. I don't remember her name because I worked at a record label and she was there with one of the bands. And her title was a Rock and Roll Nanny. She was nanny for a lot of celebrity singers. And there's this one couple, which I can't not name, but he was a singer and his wife was a model, very well known. And they had her around with them so that when the baby woke up at night in the hotel room, she would go and get the baby.
Oh my goodness.
No. Okay, first of all, from child rearing, because that's what you have a degree in early childhood development, correct?
Yeah.
Okay, so when the baby is 3 weeks old, it should be with its mom. So
bonding with the mom.
So she would get a bottle and she would hold the baby so the mom could sleep. So if that mom woke up, she was fired because she wasn't doing her job.
It's almost like they have these kids
they're an accessory.
Open these door. Exactly.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
But they don't even necessarily want these children.
No, we've all seen it firsthand. We've seen it and we've heard the stories about these women, celebrities who have babies because it's what they think they should be doing to create the look of a loving family, and they spend no time. I was friends with an assistant who was an assistant to a celebrity. His wife was not a celebrity, but she had married a couple of different athletes, and she was well known because of the athletes she had married. And the story goes that whenever someone came to the house, she would yell to the nanny, "Bring me the baby." So she would put the baby on her hip and walk to the door and open up the door and be like, "Hi." But she had not laid hands on that baby all morning until her friend showed up at the door.
And then when they leave, she's tossing the child back to the nanny.
Yep. And that comes from a very good source who actually worked in the house. So I know that to be true.
Yeah, like you said, an accessory. It opens doors. They get to boast about the schools they're at, and
so it's crazy. I want to talk a little bit about something that I found interesting, and that is the hierarchy of a home. It's the husband and wife. It's the personal assistant. It's the nanny. It's the head housekeeper. Then it's the 2 other or 3 other housekeepers. And then the chef is really far down on the line. So that to me is the hierarchy of the house. How do you see it?
I think that's accurate. I do remember you coming in, and I had already been there for a little bit. And now mom was delegating everything to you to communicate to me. And I just remember thinking, oh, who is this?
I know.
Who's telling me my schedule and where the boys need to be. And I remember the first week, I think I gave you attitude.
Oh, I'm sure you did. If it makes you feel any better, I worked for another family, and oh my gosh. So in that house, the nanny was in charge. And I can say her name. It's Alma. And you know Alma. And Alma was in charge of that. Everyone was afraid of Alma. So I came in, and I remember one day, I'm in, like, honestly, at that point, because, you know, prices have gone up, but that house at that point was like a $20 million home. And I walk in, I'm starving. I'd been working all morning in the house, and I wanted lunch, and I didn't bring a lunch. So it's like, I'm in a $20 million home, and Alma does the grocery shopping. And I'd only been there for like a couple weeks. And I remember opening up the refrigerator, and I was like, why is there no lunch meat in here? And Alma goes, I'll never forget. Alma looked at me. She goes, I don't buy you lunch meat. I buy the family lunch meat.
Oh.
And I turned around, I looked at her, I go, we're in a $20 million house. Add an extra pound of turkey when you get it next time. And then she looked at me and she goes, oh, we're going to be good friends. I'm like, seriously, like, if I'm in this house, I want something to eat.
I remember the mom I worked for, remember Zone? The delivery.
Oh, yeah. The food zone, the diet zone. Yeah.
So she went through this, like, trying to lose weight, and she did Zone, all these expensive,
I was eating
meals. Yeah. And there was all these, she wasn't eating all of them. They were
getting thrown away.
And she was just throwing them away instead of, like, offering, you were probably getting in there. But I just remember thinking, like, you'd rather throw them away than let some of us eat these meals.
Oh, so that was something I didn't realize, that, like, maybe I did. Now that you're bringing that up, I may have known that we weren't supposed to eat those meals, but I think I was still doing it. And I was, like, eating the ones in the back and then pushing the ones up in the front so no one knew I ate them. I'm sure, because I never brought a lunch. My whole thing was like, look, the perk here is I should be able to eat the food that's here. Like, that was my whole thing.
Absolutely. I also remember looking up Zone years later because I wanted to maybe do it to lose weight. And I saw those prices and I thought, oh, yeah, well, this won't be happening.
Oh, yeah. No. Zone was so expensive.
It's so expensive. Yeah. And the food is being thrown away.
So people always ask me, like, what my typical day is like. They all want to know, like, tell me, what do you do? What do you do? So as a personal assistant, I always say, well, they would say, do you take care of the kids? I'm like, no, that's what a nanny does. So for me, I would always be very clear, like, every house is different. So I could be in a house where I'm doing a lot for that family, meaning, like, I'm scheduling every kid's, birthday parties, and I'm scheduling the mom's social events, and I'm scheduling the dad's, like, poker nights. Or I could be in a family where the mom and the dad are pretty much doing their own thing, and I'm just, like, working with the accountant, making sure all the bills are paid, and maybe, I don't know, like, doing some dinner parties at the house. So every family has different needs. The one thing that I can say is, why would someone hire me? Someone hires me because I bring my Rolodex with them and I make their lives easier. Like, that's generally the job of a personal assistant. So if I come in and I can make your life easier, I'm worth every penny. And what does that mean? Sometimes it could be as simple as being able to send a fax because they don't know how to use their fax machine. Mm-hmm. Or it can be as complicated as getting backstage tickets for a Harry Styles concert. I mean, it runs the gamut, but you have to be able to do it. And if you can't do it, you don't have this job for very long. Like, you get paid extremely well. Personal assistants start anywhere from like, I mean, now if we're going to talk now, it could be like $60 to $70 an hour on up. But the point of them paying you that is that you make their lives easy. And the moment that stops, then you have no value to them. So like if someone were to, like any of my families were to come in and say, oh, Jane had a baby, I need a baby gift. Well, I better be able to tell them where to get the most fabulous baby basket, and it better be fabulous, because if I show up with something from Target or Bed Bath & Beyond, I'm out. Like what you bring to the table is a reflection of like your experience and knowledge. So I'll never forget, for one instance, there was this amazing woman in Brentwood who did these beautiful baby baskets. She owned a baby store. And I had a client that I was working for in Beverly Hills. I loved this woman's shop, and it's in Brentwood. And most of the people that I worked with would order from her. I remember bringing her over to this house in Beverly Hills, and I said to her, this woman's going to be your client forever. She brought her basket. She brought all of her like organic baby onesies that cost like hundreds of dollars, and her beautiful like wooden little baby toys. And my client didn't like it at all. Didn't order one thing. And
oh no.
And I was like, because that's a big deal. Like, I'm bringing this woman in, nothing was ordered. And that sends a message to now my client, like the person I'm working for, my family, like, what, I didn't really like your taste. So then you're like,
right.
All right, I need to reel this in. Like, now what do I do? Cause she didn't like that. Well, shit, she's not going to like anything I do, because that was like, that's Brentwood. You know what I mean? Like, okay,
right.
What now? What now? Like, I can't go any higher. You know what I mean? Like, okay. But I always found that if I was able to bring something to the table for every single person I worked for and made their lives easier, then I was worth what I was charging. When you parlayed from nanny work to personal assisting, how was it different? Like, and what did you like or dislike about it?
Well, I definitely liked the fact that now I didn't feel like I'm not raising children anymore. I'm kind of now in a more, almost felt like I had graduated.
Yeah.
Where now I'm really dealing with, and not to say being a nanny, I didn't feel like that was an important job, as I was responsible with these two human beings, but it definitely felt different. Like the priorities were different, everything changed. And what's crazy is the family that I ended up working for after the nanny position. Now, I thought these people had money.
No.
The family I worked for at the nanny position. But then when I got to this other family, I thought, okay, that this is different type of money.
Okay, so we can talk about that without saying names, because you and I both worked there, and
we ended up going there together years later.
You actually, I think, took the job after I left. Remember, you
yes.
with me.
Well, we did it together.
Oh, you're right. We did.
Yes, we did it together for a little bit, and then you were like, I'm out of here, and you ended up quitting, and then I stayed for a little bit. And then it got too much for me, and I ended up getting the hell out of there.
Okay.
Ooh,
so
yes.
We both worked for this family, and they're American, and they come from oil.
Yeah.
So it just is beyond. So the family that Gina and I met, we thought that family was wealthy. This family made them look like Walmart.
Yeah.
And let's just go right into it. So
yeah.
At this point, I had worked enough to know good things. Like, there's something about personal assisting that it teaches you the lifestyle of the 1%. You get a really crash course on how they live, the stuff, the food they buy, because everyone that I've ever worked for is like macrobiotic, gluten-free, no sugar, no dairy. Like it's crazy. There's no one with white bread in their house. I've never been in a house with white bread. I've never seen, the one family that you and I worked for where we met, they did have snacks. Like they were kind of more normal, but they did have crazy foods too. And like the kids would have to eat peanut butter and jelly on like sprouted bread.
Oh, yes.
Okay,
yes.
Okay. The 1% is crazy about their food. Let's just like be honest. Like just from our experience, they're insane about their food. But so you get a crash course on this. And I have to say a couple of firsts for me. Like when I first worked as a personal assistant for Gail Zappa, I remember I was shocked that like anyone would have 2 washers and 2 dryers. I did not, what is the need for that? Then cut to 10 years into my career and I'm ordering another washer and dryer for a family because it's obscene to me that they only have 1. Like how can you only have 1 washer and dryer?
No, you need 2.
You do, because as Gail Zappa told me, I need a washer for my quilts and then I need a washer for everything else.
Of course. Yeah. Makes sense.
And that had to make perfect sense from a girl coming from Chicago whose washer and dryer in her family's house constantly broke down and my dad was not replacing it. Okay. He was not, no less now going to a house that has 2 brand new ones. All right. But the one thing I learned by working for this family, the oil family, was they had a lot of money, but they didn't have the culture that came with having money. Like I walked into their house, and this is just me being like a snooty personal assistant. I'll never forget. I went to the bathroom and their bathroom probably was a $40,000 bathroom. It had French silk walls. And just look it up if you want to know how much a square foot of French silk is. Okay. So this bathroom, just the toilet and the sink, everything had to be a $40,000 bathroom. And there was Dove soap in the soap dish. I was like, oh, somebody's from the trailer park here because she wasn't raised in Beverly Hills. If she was raised in Beverly Hills, there'd be French milled soap in this bathroom, not soap. And I was like, just funny telling things that you.
Or that could have been a housekeeper that put that in there and she never went into the guest bathroom and saw that.
No, because I've worked in plenty of homes where there's no Dove soap. There's no bar soap. No, it's French milled soap everywhere. So I was like, oh, okay. So we got a $40,000 bathroom here with Dove soap. I'm going to meet this woman and see what's up. I wasn't far off.
That's true. I do remember things that kind of would give you that idea that, but that's what people who don't come from money and then all of a sudden now as they're adults, now they have money.
Right. So it's like the little things you're like, you weren't raised in Beverly Hills. Or you haven't caught on. Because look, there's another family I've worked for that they're billionaires and she wasn't raised in Beverly Hills, but she's caught on. There's no Dove soap in their house. Let me just tell you.
So I'm going to go back to the other family you and I worked for, the oil family. Yeah. So I remember there was a point where there was a breaking point for you where you had had enough. I remember it was something about she had 2 dogs. Now you remember they had their own yacht and private plane.
Yeah.
And they were taking the yacht like down into, I don't know where they were going. If they were going down into Italy or France. And the dogs had to have like a certain shots, or they had to show paperwork to come back, or the dogs would be confiscated.
Oh my God. I think that's what there was.
And you sent them all the correct paperwork. You sent her, and there was something else she needed or wanted. I can't remember, but that was your breaking point.
Yes, Gina, that was something that I said, whatever I did. And it was like, And I'm a very hard worker. And
Yeah, you're very thorough. You had what she needed.
and I think she was complaining about something else. And then I was like, okay, I'm done. Like I literally
Yeah.
said to her that day, it's my last day. I was like, and I think I even said to her, I cannot make you happy. She didn't want to be happy. She wanted you to fail. Her goal was just to make you feel like shit. And you
Yeah.
hear about people like this all the time. She was highly uneducated. If she finished high school, I would be surprised. She married wealth, and she was just honestly like new money gone bad. She was like a Jersey housewife, but without the jersey.
Yes. Yes.
And so I'm educated. I graduated magna cum laude from my college. Like, you're not going to talk to me like that. You can't even complete a sentence. Like, you should be lucky I'm here. And that's how I've always felt about working as a personal assistant. Like, I'm here for you, but to a point. Like you got somebody who's pretty well educated, really skilled, and takes their job serious. And if that's not good enough, then there's something wrong with you. So I remember I couldn't work for idiot anymore. I like idiocracy, like grammatically incorrect. And she's telling me that I'm doing my job wrong. And I'm like, okay, then you find someone who could do right. She just wanted somebody she could abuse. And that wasn't me. That was not. So let's talk about like some crazy requests that you and I have had throughout the years from our families. So you go first.
Well, so the nanny job, they had an older lab that was really sick. And the mom wanted me to take him to the vet to be put to sleep.
Wait, you're going to put the dog down?
Yeah.
By yourself?
Yeah. She wanted me to do that. First of all, how do you not want to be the one to say goodbye to your family dog? And then I think she wanted me to actually tell the boys what was going on. I can't remember. But I was so proud of myself when I looked at her and told her, absolutely not. Will I do that?
That had to be hard for you because you want to please them and,
Yeah. And at the same time, like, there is no way I am going to do that. Like, you cannot ask someone to do that for you. Yes, I can run errands and do a grocery shop and do other things, but to ask me to take your dog to the vet to be put down, that's where I had to draw the line on that. Absolutely not.
I sort of think like maybe I remember that. I'm shocked to hear it now, but I'm like, that doesn't sound surprising. Like, I think
I remember that messed me up for a while. I think I even cried driving home that night. There were times where she wanted me to take the boys to their therapy sessions.
And sit in the session with them.
Family therapy sessions.
Did you do it?
I think I did it a couple of times, which, funny enough, there were moments where I was sitting there and it was actually helping me too. Where I was like, oh, I do need this therapy.
Oh my God.
The younger child, he was good. Emotionally, he was pretty strong and stable, but the older child, I could definitely see there was a lot of emotional stuff going on. He didn't want to be left alone at night. He could not go to sleep without someone sitting in there with him. So I would have to sit in there with him at night until he fell asleep. Because if you left, he would get up and go in his parents' room. So they would ask me if I would sit in there with him until he fell asleep. And there were nights where he was up until 10 at night. So I would have to sit in there till 10 o'clock at night until he fell asleep. And then there were nights where I just told them I had plans or I couldn't stay. And I knew they weren't happy about it. And I could tell they were pissed off about it. But at the same time, I just wanted to, this is your child.
Right.
This is your child. And there's obviously an issue here where your 10-year-old cannot be in a room by himself at night, you know? And, mom is, trying to like hire a sleep therapist, and she's spraying all this stuff in his room at night,
When
trying to get him to
honestly, she should
just
just
craziness.
be in the
Just
room.
be present, just be with him. Exactly.
Yeah.
But that kind of stuff.
Let's talk a little bit about the cars that the nannies get to drive. Okay.
Oh, yes.
When you work as a personal assistant, I would be able to drive any car that I wanted. Like if I was going to run an errand, I would just pick whatever car. But I had a choice of a Range Rover, a Mercedes, a couple different Mercedes, BMWs, Lexuses, like whatever was in the house. If I usually I use my own car. I just like driving my own car.
So when I first started working for them, it was a Range Rover. So they had a Range Rover, they had a Mercedes, and then I think a BMW. But it was like the BMW that was like the race car.
Oh no! At one point,
BMW. Yeah, it was like an $80,000 car. That was Dad's car. But the Range Rover is usually what I use. I think it made them feel good that I'm driving them around in this car, and it's an SUV. It probably felt safe to them that I was driving around. But I just remember the first time getting in that car and pulling out of the driveway to take the boys somewhere. And, I had never driven a Range Rover before. I'm, 24 years old. And I remember dropping them off, going back to the house, and I just wanted to keep going. Like I just wanted to drive down the coast. And that's the hard thing about working for these families. At the end of the day, you get back into, your little bucket.
Interesting that you say this about having to get back in your bucket car, having to go back to your 1-bedroom apartment in the valley when everything is easy for them. Everything is beautiful for them. Money is not an issue.
Hey All Stars, if you love where you're living, we want to know why. Hit the link tree below for all of our socials and give us your best pitch. We're trying to grow our podcast community so other listeners can hear from people like you. If your hometown rocks, don't keep it a secret. Hit subscribe and comment to let the other viewers in on the action. Whoever gets their pitch read gets a handy little $25 Amazon gift card. Thanks for engaging with us, and if you're a travel or real estate expert interested in coming on the show, drop us a line at info@skiptownallstars.com. Empty nest, full tank. Back to the show.
I had this discussion one time with another personal assistant, and she said to me, because they treated her so well. So every assistant is treated differently by every family. This personal assistant went everywhere with the wife, and they gave her a $20,000 a year clothing allowance. So they expected her to wear like Gucci loafers. They expected her to like have cashmere jackets on because she really, and most personal assistants are an extension of the family. So you have to have a certain look about you. You have to dress nice as a personal assistant. Nanny is a little different. You're with the kids, they're spitting up, you're playing with paint. It's a little different. But as a personal assistant, you have to dress nice. Do not come in with your $50 jeans that you got at H&M. No, like you better have on $250 jeans. Like whether you're broke or not, you have to look the part.
Yes.
So this particular assistant, they were generous enough to give her the money because they really wanted her to dress a certain way. Whenever she traveled with them, she flew on the jet. She made well into six figures, Gina, when that wasn't the norm for personal assistants. And she said to me one time, it really sucks that I'm with them the entire day. They treat me like family, but then I have to go home. And she said, it's like a fantasy that's over. And she also mentioned how when she flies with like her husband or her mom and dad, she's like, I hate walking through first class and going to coach. She's like, I should be sitting in first class. And so she said to me, and I've been asked this question many times by people and by her as well. How does it not bother you getting in your car and going back to your little house? Like, how does it not bother you? And you know what? I guess it's just because like that was never my lot in life. It just wasn't. I remember one time I was working for my family in Beverly Hills, and oh my God, I had to run into Brentwood to go to like pick up a cake at Susie Cakes or something like that, right? I'm dressed in my normal clothes, which if you know me, you know it's like a uniform. It's like usually a black tank top, jeans, black boots, or like a black t-shirt, jeans, black boots, or whatever. My boots are really expensive. My jeans are really expensive. The t-shirt's really expensive because I'm working. I have nice jewelry on, but that's kind of like what I wear. And I'll never forget when I went to go pick up this cake and I got out of my car and looked around. I was like, everyone was in cream and white. Everyone in Brentwood wears cream and white. They wear those floppy hats. Everyone's nails are with a French manicure. I grabbed that cake as fast as I could. I got in my car. I did not want to be lingering in my like what looked like goth outfit from like Hot Topic compared to like everyone else looked like. And I drove to Beverly Hills. I walked in the house and she said to me, "Oh, how was it? Thanks for getting the cake." And I said, "I am never going to Brentwood again. Never." She said, "Why?" I go, "Everybody was in cream and white and their nails looked so good." And she goes, "F Brentwood." That's what
Really?
she goes,
Oh.
she goes, "F Brentwood." Oh my God. Okay.
Well, so that's how do you know I killed myself trying to afford Juicy outfits. Do you remember Juicy?
Couture. Juicy Couture. Oh, of course.
Yes.
Of course. Yeah. Everybody had the sweat, the zip up with the J. Of course.
Yes. Everybody had the
you had to tell me about Juicy.
Oh yeah. It was, I think for this set, it was 100 and something.
This is
Now I'm making a nanny salary.
Right.
But all I knew was I have to have I have to have Juicy. I have to have these sweats.
You told me what it was because I had no idea what it was. And you walked in with these velour pants because
that's right.
Velour, do you remember velour you can get at Target and not
yeah.
Kmart? When I was growing up, everyone wore velour shorts and you got them at Kmart. So I was like, what is with this velour? I remember you schooled me. You were like, oh, you haven't heard of this? You're like, it's called Couture. And I was like, no, tell me.
Yeah, and I'm learning it as I'm seeing, it's exploding in Brentwood. But to your point, I felt like I needed to be dressing like this, to be running errands, showing up at the boys' school. I felt like I needed to be wearing these clothes.
Expensive tank tops too. You used to wear those.
Oh yeah, Michael Stars.
Yes, you wore those Michael Stars tank tops. Those were like $50 a tank top back then. Yeah, you were a really well-dressed nanny.
Yeah, all I kept, and now that I look back, it was this need of wanting what I was seeing.
Well,
the mom and yeah. So I'm killing myself. I probably was like not paying my DWP bill and spending it on Juicy outfits because I wanted to feel like included, part of the, I wanted to also feel that, that luxury of wearing Juicy, Yeah,
it makes sense that every family should give their nanny or personal assistant allowance. Honestly, if the nanny is going to go out,
I agree.
They should have an allowance. Okay, you were really fortunate. You went to Hawaii with this family all the time.
Yes.
On vacation.
4 seasons in Maui.
And so that was a really nice perk, but not every nanny gets that. Not every nanny gets that.
That is true. That was also the fun side and the enjoyable times is going to Hawaii, staying at the 4 Seasons Hotel. And when we would go during the kids' spring break from school. So anybody was at the 4 Seasons in April.
Drop names right now.
We were in a cabana one day and Eddie Murphy and his family were literally in the cabana next to us. And the family I work for, the dad is saying hi to him and like small talking him. I'm just like, that's Eddie Murphy.
Your whole life you grew up watching Eddie Murphy movies.
Watching Eddie Murphy. And now he's standing 2 feet away from me, like small talking the family I work for. Like,
and you have to be cool.
And you have to be cool.
Isn't that
To
really?
this day, I still cannot probably afford a trip to the Four Seasons Maui. Like it is like,
It's how much was a night? Like go back.
okay,
This is
so
how many years
so
ago?
later on, I looked up the room I was staying in. I was staying in a standard room, garden view, and I think at the time, I think my room was 900 a night. The family I worked for, they were staying in a 2-bedroom suite overlooking the ocean. That room was 6,000 a night. Like that's how much, and that was 20 years ago.
Yeah, that's crazy. And then you still got your salary.
Still got my salary. Yes, I got paid extra because I was now traveling. Now, traveling with them was fun and I'm being exposed to these trips. I'm staying at this 5-star luxury hotel. But then there was also I have to be with the kids all day into the night. So I'm not necessarily I'm sort of enjoying it, but it's not like I can just go lay on the beach with like a book and
So
a
they
cocktail.
basically have you from morning till night, right?
Oh, yes.
Okay, because my friend was a nanny for a very wealthy family, and she said the vacations were great, but she said they owned me the entire time. I never got a
Yeah.
night to myself.
Yeah. I was up first thing in the morning. The boys was they wanted to either go down to the beach or go to the pool. So I needed to be the one watching them while, the parents were off getting massages or having a nice breakfast. I'm
Ever
watching the
exhausted?
kids.
Like, how did you keep up that pace?
It was hard, but I look back, I was young at the time. So, I was in there in the trenches in the ocean with the boys, swimming with them. You know, I, I probably definitely felt lucky at the time because I remember friends of mine being kind of like jealous almost that I was able to go on a trip like this,
But
kind of envious.
they didn't know what you were going through the rest of the year, like how hard
That's
that
true.
job was, you know?
I will say one year, also, my birthday always fell.
Oh,
My birthday is April 4th. So one year, my birthday fell the week we were going. I still went, even though it was one of the days was going to be my birthday. And I will say they went all out. We went to dinner at Spago out there. They got me a cake. They bought me a facial and a massage at the spa.
oh,
Yes.
wow.
I mean, it was short lived. Then it was like, okay, get back to, my duties. But I do remember they did that because they probably felt like, well, if she comes, we need to at least do
Make her feel
something for her,
special. It's her
make her feel
birthday.
special.
Yeah,
Yes. So I remember that was nice. Like I got a massage and a facial at the Four Seasons Maui,
that's
That was
amazing.
that was very nice.
I didn't go on trips. So my parameters as a personal assistant, I made it very clear since I had kids that I could not travel with people. I like one time someone asked me to go on a trip and I thought that maybe I could, but it just didn't happen. So I didn't get to experience that part of being a personal assistant as I know a lot of personal assistants get to travel with their families. It just wasn't really an option for me. But the one thing that I can say that I did get from one of my families was lots of beautiful gifts. I mean, they were always very, very generous and they bought my kids gifts. So the crazy requests sometimes I would get were always just made up for thoughtfulness. Like, and,
Hmm.
and just, it was so sweet. Like, I worked for a family for 14 years. If you were to call that woman that I worked for 14 years, and I just stopped working for her because of the pandemic, because I was still, even though I had my personal permanent makeup job, I was still working a couple days a week for her. If you were to ask her the name of my kids, she couldn't tell you.
Really?
Her for 14 years.
Stop it. She doesn't know the name of the girls?
Nope. Uh-uh.
Wow.
But the other family, oh my God, like they had my kids over their house. The mom would like, oh my gosh, there were these crazy shoes that were all the rage. Like when my kids were little, you could only buy them at like Fred Siegel. And they were like $100 there were tennis shoes that were like, honestly, they were just bedazzled tennis shoes, but they were like over the top expensive. She bought each girl a pair of those. Like one day she went out while I was working, came home and said, hey, I got something for the girls. You know, something for the girls means like a pair of kids or like a little beanie that she picked up. No, she got each girl one of those tennis shoes. Like that was incredible. She did it again, like a second time. Then like a year later, she did it again. And it was like, oh my God, like she did the most thoughtful things. And it just goes to show you like how two families, you're doing the same job for two families and they can treat you completely different.
Completely different.
Not that the woman who doesn't know the name of my children right now wasn't nice. She just didn't take an interest. I was there to do a job. And that was it. That was it. There was nothing more. And what's interesting to me is that when you work as a personal assistant for a family, you know the ins and outs of that family. Like you form a relationship with everyone in the family. So it's very common for you to become friends with them if they're good, if they're nice and respectful of your time and all that. You as a personal assistant want to be friends with them. Like you want the best for them. Like you're their protector in so many ways. Right. So it's interesting when people don't take an interest in their workers, like in their staff. It's so profound to me because the staff that works for these people dedicate their lives. I mean, their entire lives, housekeepers that have been there for 30 years. I mean, look, I worked for one family for 18 years and I worked for another one for 14 years. It's like, how do you not know my kids' names? Right. The housekeeper knows my kids' names. The housekeeper's been to graduation parties, birthday parties. I've been to their parties. The head housekeeper, her and I are tight. Like I've had lunches with her, but my employer doesn't know my kids' names. Like it's
that's crazy.
Crazy. The hardest part about personal assisting, I have to say, you are always judged by the last job you did. Just like anything in life, but honestly, like with that, if you can't pull it off, no matter what it is, oh my gosh. Like I remember an incident. I was working, helping a travel agent on a vacation that was costing $1 million. And I remember there was 15 people going and they wanted me, the family, to get visas for this little tiny country in Africa. They had to pass through the country to get to another country. It was part of their vacation. I couldn't do it. I mean, there was $1 million at stake. And if I couldn't get 15 visas for this pass through, then the remainder of their trip would be null and void. They couldn't, I'm not explaining it.
Wow.
Yeah. I'm not explaining it clearly, but it was like that. And I remember telling the wife, I said, we have to hire somebody to do this because if I do it incorrectly, one T not crossed, one I not dotted, 15 people can't continue on their adventure. And I remember her saying to me, no, I want you to do it. And I said, do you know what's at stake here? And she said, yeah, but you will do it well because you always do it. And it wasn't like she couldn't afford to do somebody. She said, I don't trust anyone else to do it. Those were like literally her words. I don't trust anyone else to do it. She was flying. She was going out of town. So she couldn't even look at it like for me. Oh my God, Gina, I didn't sleep. You know what it was too? It wasn't even that like once this paperwork was done, guess what? The family still had to wait in line at like the consulate that was at the airport. It was something insane and they still had to get an approval there. So we have 15 people who don't wait in line for anything that I now had to say, okay, the paperwork went through, but we won't know for sure until you have and this tiny airport. Yeah, Gina, it was so nerve-wracking. I can't even tell you because you're the first person they're going to blame The first person.
Absolutely.
And I kept just texting her on the day that I knew she was going to be landing at that airport. And I just kept saying, did you make it? Did you go through? She's like, we're standing in line. We're standing in line. And then she would say, okay, so-and-so went through, part of the group. So-and-so went through. Okay, I'm next. Okay, my husband went through, blah, blah, blah. It wasn't until the last person I was like, I can sleep. Like I didn't sleep for 3 days. And I told her, I said, never want to do that again. The travel agent didn't want to do it. The travel agent said, I can't do it. Like somebody has to be able to, these forms have to be perfect. Like one thing cannot be off on these forms. That was like, oh my God, I can't believe I was able to do that. Another one was when one of my families went to London and they happened to stumble along the premiere of Harry Potter. And she saw a brooch that Emma Watson was wearing. And she walked in the house the day she arrived and came to me and said, I want this brooch. That was it. That was all I knew, was that Emma Watson wore a brooch and it was at the Harry Potter premiere. And how it went from that to her getting that brooch was all me. And she didn't just get one of them. The designer made her 3 after I talked to her.
Oh.
So that is something that a personal assistant has to do. When someone walks in, your boss, and says, I want this, and you don't make it happen, like you have to make it happen. I remember James waking me up at like 4 a.m. because this designer's in London. And she had availability to talk to me at like whatever it was, like noon or 2:00, whatever the 7 hours was. And I had set my alarm so I could wake up and call her. And I remember James nudging me and saying, the alarm's going off. You have to call that jewelry designer.
Oh.
So, I know. So for me, that was pretty amazing that I was able to pull that off. And I remember when I called, because at first I was like, how does this start? And I remember, okay, I need to get in touch with Emma Watson's agent. And you know how hard that is?
Oh, very hard.
Have someone take your call. And I just, the assistant kept saying, the assistant of the agent's assistant, because every agent has 2 assistants. They were like, wait, how do I know that this isn't like some crazy person? I'm like, I was like, I am some crazy person. I'm like, this is legitimately a crazy person. I said, but you have to help me. I said, and the minute I say I'm a personal assistant, they're like, oh, okay. They're like, all right, what do you need, girl? Like all of them are like, what do you need? Because they all know it's a really tough job.
Well, don't you remember the woman we worked for in Bel Air? Do you remember she had a personal shopper at Saks Fifth Avenue? It was this really sweet woman. And the woman we worked for would have us send her photos of designer dresses that had been worn in the runway or that a celebrity had been wearing out somewhere. And we had to send these pictures, and she now had the task of trying to find them. Yeah.
I remember
sometimes she succeeded, sometimes she didn't.
I remember one time when one of my families, the woman walked in and handed me a tear sheet from a magazine that was like 4 years old. And she's like, I want this shirt that Gwen Stefani has. And I was like, oh, okay, that's 4 years old. How am I
gonna find that?
There was one time where I was on my own vacation, and this happened quite often. It was 4th of July, and you know Malibu at 4th of July is insanity.
It's crazy.
Cars don't move, people don't move. So for this family, they had, again, 10 people for a dinner reservation at a restaurant in Malibu. Well, this particular restaurant has 2 restaurants. They have one on the pier and they have one on the beach. Well, I made this reservation for the one on the beach. I'm in Vegas. It's 4th of July. I'm in Vegas. My daughter's in a dance competition. We're walking the boardwalk. It's hot as can be. My phone is going off. They're at this restaurant and there's no dinner reservation for this particular restaurant on the beach.
Oh.
The one that's at the pier. Well, they don't like that menu. I know I made it for the right one. I think the person that took the reservation, and really, I always say I'm as good as the person I'm working with. Like that girl probably just made a mistake. Gina, I cannot tell you, my family will admit to this. I was a lunatic. There's 10 people standing at a restaurant. They're calling me. I'm on the strip in Vegas. I'm trying to run into places so I can hear them. So I could hear them. Every place I go into, it's because like the what do you call it?
The
Slot
casino,
machine.
the slot
I
machine.
literally ran into like, I don't even know. It was like one of those t-shirt stores. And I ran into the dressing room. I ran into the dressing room of a t-shirt store. I closed the door and there's music overhead because we're in Vegas. So it's like I'm in one of those rinky dink t-shirt stores and I still cannot even hear them. At that point, all I did is I called the manager. I said, help. I said, please help me. Like, what can you do? I have 10 people standing there. They don't want to eat at the pier. They want to eat at this restaurant. And she said to me, you know, it's 4th of July in
4th of July.
Malibu. And I said, I'm in Vegas right now with 10 people standing in your restaurant and I'm their personal assistant. And she said, all right, let me see what I can do. And you know, as well as I do, people don't do that for you in Los Angeles. They want to
Right.
Hostesses are so happy when you show up and there's no reservation, like, sorry. And so,
I don't see your name.
Yeah, she made it happen. And that week when I got back to work, I sent that girl like $150 worth of flowers. I literally was like, oh, like she made that happen. I don't know where she created a table. I don't know what she did, where she made this happen. She made it happen.
Also, you had to kind of like give the inkling, like kind of hint a little bit that the people you're trying to book this for, they're powerful people.
They have a house in Malibu.
Money.
Yeah.
They have a house in Malibu.
Yeah.
You know, they're well-known, prominent, Bel Air family.
I would say it in my own words, however I could exactly. Like for her, I probably said to her, I literally remember saying, help me. Like I literally said those words. And I said, they have a house in Malibu. I'm their assistant. Can you help me?
Help me.
I know.
Oh my God.
What's the best advice you could give somebody that's starting a business?
You have to have thick skin and know that your life is now no more. They now own you. There might be days where you're working from sun up to sundown to get things done. So I think people need to know that. Don't think it's going to be this kind of, luxury life, hobnobbing. It's a lot of work and you have to have thick skin. Now, probably the only friendly person that maybe you work for is Jennifer Aniston in LA.
George Clooney. Everyone says he's super friendly. Like
George Clooney and Jennifer Aniston, I hear, Jennifer Aniston, George Clooney. They're probably the two people you would want it, but they've probably had their assistants for like 30 years.
Well, everyone said Ben Affleck was really nice, but then he slept with the nanny. So I don't know.
That's right. And then I've heard Kourtney Kardashian goes through an assistant once a week.
When you
nannies
hear that,
once a week.
Yeah.
But you probably have these young girls who think they want to go work for the Kardashians, and like Kourtney can't even keep somebody for a week, I say if you're young and you have the thick skin and you're not in a committed relationship, you're not married, you don't have kids, yes, maybe go experience that for a couple of years. But if you enjoy your holidays and your free time, I would say this is probably not a job for you.
Yeah, I would say that my best piece of advice, if you're going to do it, is clear your schedule.
Yeah.
Like just clear your schedule because your life is not your own. And you better get well versed on all things Beverly Hills. Like,
yes.
Don't walk in there telling them that the best place to get towels is, Bed Bath and Beyond. No.
Yes, you need to know where the brand names are, where to go.
Yes.
And let me tell you, there is a lot of layers to that. You think you might know, but
look at my Brentwood.
Listen,
my Brentwood.
I didn't know what a crudité platter was. I learned what a crudité platter was working for the Brentwood family.
What did you call it?
A vegetable platter.
Okay, I didn't know what an Hermes bag was
Oh,
until
yes.
I got here and I called it a Hermes. Okay, I called it a Hermes. And then someone said that
No,
this
the
girl
H
said,
is silent. Yeah.
yeah. So yeah, there's a lot
Uh,
of layers for
there's
sure.
a lot of learning to be, yeah. So just know your shit. Almost, I would say you almost have to study, you know.
Agreed. Oh, I agreed. I
You
told
need to
somebody
know
one time,
food, you need to know
my
wine.
God, somebody asked me, how do I learn this stuff? I said, grab a Vogue magazine, grab a Los Angeles magazine. I said, get an InStyle magazine right now and do a tutorial for yourself before you start working for a family. You know, LA, you know, InStyle, and you know, Vogue. I'm like, you need to know all of this, like what's happening locally, what's happening nationally in the fashion world. And like, you better know the right words. Don't come in saying Hermes, okay? Because you're going.
No, no, you need to know the restaurants. Now, the woman we worked for up in Bel Air. Do you remember there was the other girl that was kind of like their assistant who booked the plane and
Yeah.
the yacht? Do you
Yeah.
remember her?
Yeah.
I remember she was so upset one night because she got ridiculed for grabbing the wrong bottle of wine for them to take to someone's house.
See, that's just like that woman being a total
Yeah,
horrible human being. Like, you know what
yeah,
I mean? Like she's not a sommelier. She's an assistant who's booking
yeah,
restaurants. She doesn't know wine. And let's be
right.
honest, Dove soap doesn't know wine either. She just learned. Okay? Let's be
Yeah,
honest. But yeah,
yeah.
that is more common than not. Like that is unfortunately more common than not.
Hmm. Yeah.
Okay, so let's wrap this up with let's talk about our like top five best experiences and then like our bottom five. Like they would be like, I never want to do this again and I wish it
Ever again.
happened. Yeah.
I'd say the salary. I'd say the travel, going places, staying at penthouses in New York that they own, the Four Seasons in Maui. Probably meeting interesting people, being around celebrities, being in the same room, the same space, learning a lot. I felt like I definitely grew a lot in those positions. I probably learned how to have a voice, probably how to stick up for myself.
Oh yeah.
And I would say I probably took away knowing the woman that I wanted to be and the woman that I ultimately did not want to be.
Oh, that's good.
And mainly, I think I just learned a lot. I learned a lot about food, wine, brand name
Did.
brands. I probably, was up close schooling on all of that. I would say are probably all the top things.
What about your bottom five? Like, you know, I don't ever have to ever see that again or let that happen again. I'm sure the dog is one of them.
The dog, probably being belittled sometimes, being snapped at for certain things, making mistakes, recovering from that. I remember the one woman we worked for up in Bel Air. I remember she like went off on me because I didn't stock the quarters in her car that she needed when she parked down in Beverly Hills to run into the stores.
Okay, this is
I
Dove's.
remember she literally tore me apart because I didn't put a brand new roll of quarters in her Bentley for the meters in Beverly Hills. So when she went to go park, she didn't have any quarters.
Like you probably just like did so much work for her in that day, and that's what she's going to focus on.
That's what she focused on, that I didn't put a fresh new roll of quarters in the Bentley for her to be able to have for meters. And you have to go home not wanting to go back the next day, but you have to just smile and just, show up. So I think that's probably was the hardest part in realizing at the end of the day that you are the hired help and you need to do the tasks that are asked of you and grin and bear it and, move on. That's probably the hardest thing. Also, I think it's hard being around this influx of wealth and money, and you're just trying to make ends meet
Sure.
as a person, and you're just seeing this unbelievable wealth and two daughters that are being spoiled, and they're having their parties thrown on a private yacht in the Greece. I think that's kind of hard to see also.
People forget that other people don't have the ability to do the things they can do because their money situation is so vastly different.
Yeah, I remember one of the housekeepers that I had become really friendly with, like, she could barely afford her oil light was coming on in her car. And I remember just her even like struggling to have the money to get her oil change. But she's working in a $20 million home up in Bel Air, but the housekeeper can barely has enough money to get an oil change. It's like that type of,
Art. Oh, yeah. Yes, it's so vastly different.
yeah, exactly.
Okay, I'm going to do my 5. So I put together, okay. So I would say the best experiences I've had, one is the one family was just so extremely generous with me when it came to like clothes and jewelry. So on my birthday, I would get amazing pieces of jewelry, and she would give me like clothes that maybe she outgrew, and some of it still had price tags on it, and they were beautiful pieces, and never once like ever made me feel weird about, taking them or whatnot. Like it was incredible. We're not talking about like a leather jacket from like Madewell. We're talking about a leather jacket from like Neiman Marcus. You know what I mean?
Right.
So it's like, and she was happy to give it to me. And I was like, oh my God, because I would never be able to afford that, One of the highlights of me working as a personal assistant was that I was at a house working, and they had a guest staying with them. And the guest asked me as I was working if I would mind driving him to Sunset and like Doheny, which was right down the street. And I was like, sure, like no problem. He was going to take a cab or something. And I was like, no problem. And then, the woman I worked for was like, he can take an Uber. You're really busy. And I'm like, no, he's visiting. Of course I'll take him. I ended up taking him further than Sunset and Doheny because he's like, I'll walk. And I said, no, I'll take you. I'll take you. It was Ed Sheeran.
Stop.
It was Ed Sheeran. And
Really?
Yes. And he had asked me in the car, he was just visiting and he wasn't Ed Sheeran yet. And he was like, tell me, what should I do when I'm here? What is like Americana? And I was like, go to a baseball game. He's like, should I go to a Dodgers game? And I'm like, yeah, go to a baseball game. That's very Americana. And he's like, what else? Like, what do you do? And I said, like dinner and a movie. That's very Americana. And he was like, okay. So yeah, Ed Sheeran.
Really? I don't think I knew that story.
Oh yeah, that was one. Yeah.
Oh, wow.
And then the brooch that I got from Emma,
Yeah.
her designer, that was like a big top 5 that I'm like, that wasn't that's something like you're a legit personal assistant when you can pull that off. I loved having private chefs come in and cook. Oh my God, that to me was fantastic. Like whenever there was a party and a private chef would come, I loved that. And they were always so nice. And then, so the Ed Sheeran thing turned into a Taylor Swift thing. So when Ed Sheeran was touring with Taylor Swift, because I worked for the family and they were so generous, they got the girls backstage. So the girls got to meet Ed. Yeah. And then they sat right on the side of the stage. And Ellie still talks about it to this day that Taylor came over to her and did this. Ellie's like, she made contact mom and she did this.
Oh, okay. That's major.
That is worth like everything. Like that was incredible. Like that was so beyond generous because they knew that my girls were huge Taylor Swift fans and Ed was opening up for them. And so they knew they could get tickets and they extended it to my girls. It was beyond like I'm forever grateful. I mean, forever. So the bottom 5. Okay, there was a party at a house one time and the party planner, who was a total big B, asked me if I cleaned the bathroom yet.
What?
I went up to her and the party was just about to start. I went up to her and she knew I was the personal assistant. She had met me before. And she was actually the assistant of the party planner. So I can't say the party planner, but she was the assistant of the party planner, and she was nasty. She did most of the work. She'd been with this party planner for years, and it's a very, very famous party planner. Look up the most famous party planner in LA. And
I think I know who you're talking about.
Begins with an M. And so,
That's exactly what I was thinking of.
It was her assistant who's been with her for years, who's done all of her parties. She met me the day before the party. I was introduced as like, the assistant of the house, assistant to the person. I can be helpful and I'll be there. It wasn't even my day to work. I was coming in just to make sure everything was running smoothly. So the day of the party, I go up to her and I say, is there anything that you need help with? And she looked at me and she goes, are the bathrooms clean? And I said, I don't know because I'm not the housekeeper, but I'll find out. And then I know I texted you because I went in my office and just sent a mass text to every single person I knew and said, oh my God, this woman just asked me if I would clean the bathrooms. And not that it's below me. I clean my own bathroom.
Right.
If the woman in Beverly Hills asked me to clean her bathroom, I would clean her bathroom because I love her. She's like so. And
it's interesting is now this is like the hierarchy. Like this woman thought, oh, I'm over you because I work for this person.
Oh, 100%. 100%. So yeah, that was a good one.
Wow.
The Malibu dinner fiasco with 10 people. That was a bottom 5. The visa for Africa. I never want to do that again. That was my bottom 5.
Ooh.
And then I have to say, walking through this Malibu house was also a bottom 5. One of my families was buying a Malibu house, and they asked me if I would do like the preliminary walkthrough with the real estate agent. And I just started laughing because I'm a girl from Chicago. I live in a house in the Valley. What do you want me to pick out that's wrong in this $40 million Malibu house? Like, to me, it's all going to be perfect. I just remember going through this, and they decided to pass on the house because it wasn't up to par. And I was like, that to me was hard for me to wrap my head around because this house was phenomenal. You know what I mean? Phenomenal.
Right.
And I was like, well, what am I doing here? Like the real estate agent was rude to me that they had hired, and like he was rude to me. I was like, what do you want me to do here? Like that to me, I was like, I never want to do that again. Like never.
Oh, yeah.
So that's it. But overall, I had a great experience. I mean, I do think
we definitely learned a lot,
Oh, for sure. And
we have the stories.
We do have the stories to prove it, that we learned a lot, and crazy things that make you feel like you're sane.
Yes, absolutely.
So do you miss it?
I don't, but I'm grateful for those experiences though.
Yeah.
I mean, like I said, I learned a lot, there were definitely things I learned. I don't regret anything.
I'm a taskmaster, so I do miss a task. So for me, I loved walking into a mess and making it pretty. So a lot of my job was organizing. So
you were very good at that.
I miss that. And I don't know. I just miss that every day was different. But I don't know if I would go back. I have to say, I'm not sure. I don't know. I didn't get burned out on it so much so that I wouldn't. I don't, you know what I mean? Like I still enjoy it. I still enjoy like completing things, and I always like a challenge. So maybe one day, but it's kind of like a young person's game. So I don't even know if anyone would have me at this age. Who's going to have me, an 80-year-old? I'm going to be an 80-year-old personal assistant and I'll be pushing a wheelchair. Who's going to have me?
But I definitely feel like if someone ends up with the right type of family or person to work for, you can definitely have longevity in this. You can definitely go years and years making good money, doing this work. Sure. It just depends on the person you're working for. As they respect you
100
as a human being, respect that you have a life, you
Oh, yeah.
know.
If I didn't move, if I didn't start my permanent makeup business, I'm telling you, I'd still be with the Beverly Hills family. Like she would say to me all the time,
Yeah.
I'm going to be 100 and you're going to be 92 and we're going to still be doing this together. Like she always said that to me. So yeah, so
Yeah, they were sweet.
they were. So
Yeah.
anyway, well, I'm so glad that you took the time to
I
like hang out with
know.
me
We
tonight.
went down memory lane. I know. I finished an entire glass of wine thinking about all those memories.
You brought up a lot of things that I actually forgot about. So I'm so glad that we got to talk about it. I think that our listeners are going to love like just the angle of your experiences, you know, and the angle that of mine. We worked in the same house, but handled things completely different because I didn't take care of kids and, you know, you weren't dealing with social calendars. So just, I'm really glad that we got to talk about our each individual experiences, but how we actually crossed paths and, you know, stayed friends for all these years. I mean, it's been, oh my God, it's been 20 years, 20 years.
Crazy. I know. And that we met at this home, you know, years ago. That's how our friendship started.
Yep. So thank you so much for tonight.
Of
I know it was
course.
long, but it was really fun. So thank you.
Of course. Of course.
Empty nest, full tank.
Check the mic and make sure it sound right, boys.